So this is going to be really interesting, isn't it? Because you could argue that at the end of the hour, with the abuse that tyres and brakes get, maybe some of the Yank tanks are going to struggle. Marcus Jewell sharing with Ben Klukas, lining up on the outside of the front row in the Lotus Cortina. There's also the element of this in the shared cars. You don't have to have a co-driver, but you can. Do you put your gun driver in first and hope that they pull away and build up a lead, or do you put him in at the end? Because if there's a late race safety car, you need your gun driver in to really get on with the job. So you've got Steve Soper going first and Ben Klukas going second, splitting the strategy, if you like, across the front row cars. There they are. Steve Soper for pole position, and Marcus Jewell is going to line up alongside Mark Farmer in number 132, starting third on the grid. And Richard Dutton, he is the first soloist in the Cortina, starting fourth. Now, of course, that means you get lots of track time, but it also means that the car can run at that pace for the hour, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's interesting. Richard always used to share his cars with a well-known engine builder from Norfolk, but he decided that since he owned the car, he liked driving it himself for the whole length of the race. So he's taken to doing it pretty much by himself. It looks as though we've got the grid forming in the order in which we were expecting, rather than some of the problems that occurred with the Formula 2 cars. And there will again, of course, be a green flag lap. And I'm hearing, David, that for later on in the afternoon, some of the big slick tyred cars are going to do at least 2 green flag laps to try and get some heat in the tyres, because we say again it's cold, and when we say it's cold, it's actually saying 6 degrees on the thermometer, but the wind chill factor is probably bringing that down another couple of degrees. So you do need to know that your race car's nice and warm. So we've got Minis, we've got Lotus Cortinas, we've got Ford Falcon, Ford Mustang, and a great race to be expected here. But endurance tactics do play a part, as David was just saying. You've got to know either that your co-driver is as quick as you are, or that you're going to have to try and stretch out a bit of a lead yourself in the first part of the race. So as we said, then we've got confusingly 3 cars looking identical,
yes.
And it is Steve Soper in the car on pole at the moment. Henry Mann will do part 2. And away we go on the green flag lap.
99, the yellow Mustang, that of Alex Taylor. The pale blue Cortina behind is of the redoubtable Irishman Paddy Shovlin, without his regular mate Michael Cullen for company. Michael sadly not here, and they've made a very good partnership in modern day GT cars.
Nice to see the Martin Melling, and I presume that's Jason Minshaw,
yes.
Is it, in the Ford Falcon, the blue car with the white stripe down the bonnet, and there is another Falcon further back, and that belongs to yes, the West Country Racing team, Clarkson Smithies in the Ford Falcon Sprint. That is a very original car, and 2 good amateur drivers who've been with Masters since the very beginning in 2004, racing every year, active always in British club racing, and they really enjoy it. That's the big Falcon you see coming down through the S's now.
So Steve Soper starts on pole position. Marcus Jewell will be alongside him in the second row, Mark Farmer, and then Richard Dutton, the first of the soloists. The third row of the grid, Dave Coyne will go first. Another solo driver is Craig Davis, ahead of Alex Taylor, and Roy Alderslade with his Jordan Racing Team prepared Cortina ahead of Paddy Shovlin. And Tom Sharp, gun driver from Ginettas and Porsche Carrera Cup of years past. He's got the BMW 1800 ahead of Mark Burton, and his Mustang with Jason Minshaw for company in the Ford Falcon, 12th on the grid. 13th is Mark Martin, big Lotus fan, so he's got a Lotus Cortina. Alex Thistlethwaite lines up next on the grid ahead of Sean Balfe, who goes first, sharing with radical racer Tom Ashton, and Justin Law in the new to him Cortina, built by very quick driver and preparer Andy Wolf, and that could be one to watch, I think. Dread Clothing boss Dan Wheeler is next, and for company alongside him is Dr. Alan Ross Jones ahead of John Spears, and then William Drydle next on the grid. That's the top 20 ahead of former Mini Melia star Endaf Owens. Next up comes the John Dunham driven Cortina ahead of Graham Langford, former Porsche racer, and then Phil Bullen Brown 24th. 25th on the grid is going to be in 127. Ashley Davis, Graham Pattle, then Chris Clarkson and Dave Edgecombe come next, with the grid being completed by Adrian Miles, Carl Nairn, and then Richard Bateman, as we are set to go racing. 1 hour of touring car racing is go. Lights change. Steve Soper thunders away. The Cortinas fan out across the road with a really brave effort being made by Craig Davis then, and he gets up into second place. They're 4 wide in the mid-pack. Something's got to give, surely. They've got this far all right. Now can they get out of Redgate? As being run out wide all over the curb there is Dave Coyne, and another of the Cortinas gets sideways and rallycrosses its way back onto the road. So Mustangs 1 and 2 as they drop down through the Craner curves for the first time, but Steve Soper snatches the lead and lets everybody else sort themselves out behind.
Well, that was a very exciting first corner time into Redgate, but in fact, as you said, David, quite surprisingly, only one of the Cortinas lost out onto the Redgate travel. But now he's pulled out immediately. A pretty impressive start there, hasn't he? And I think I'm right in saying that the Studebaker managed to get away with it. He looked as though he was being pushed a good deal to begin with, and I think you'll find he's dropped a couple of places from his grid position. But there you have a classic Donington shot as they rise up into Copse and back down towards us.
So the big bangers being caught on the hop a little bit by some of the rather more impudent minis or the Cortinas. At the end of the opening lap though, Steve Soper should still be ahead, trying to get away. Now what about Marcus Jewell? Look, because he got ran out wide at Redgate, so he has dropped back, as you see, up to the line. Steve Soper leads the way then. The notional winner of the 1983 British Saloon Car Championship before it all went to the courts, and Andy Rouse got the title. Craig Davis runs second, Richard Dutton is third. Fourth, good start by Alex Taylor, up from 7th on the grid. Fifth is Marcus Jewell. Sixth there in the Studebaker is Mark Farmer. Seventh is the recovering Dave Coyne. Paddy Shovelin is 8th. In 9th place is Justin Law. And then 10th is Mark Burton as they drop down through the Craner curves. So right now, Richard Dutton doing a very good job. Best of the Cortinas, coming under attack, though, from the spectacular Alex Taylor in that yellow Mustang behind him.
He really did have a really tremendous start there, David, and he did the classic inside line down to Redgate off the grid. And that worked very well for him. Nice drive. Up to 9th is Justin Law, the great Group C and Jaguar exponent. That's one of his rare visits to the touring car grid, but he started 16th and up to 9th straight away. That's an impressive start there. We'll pick him out in a minute in his Cortina. But we still have Steve Soper in the lead as they turn through Copse, but a lot closer already. Richard Dutton is going to start feeling some heat, I think, from Taylor, don't you? I think he's right there. Alex Taylor is all over the back, and yes, he's going to give it a go down into the Robert chicane.
Job done.
Ooh,
Scrabbles
yes.
through, but job done.
Yes, inside rear brake lock is an exciting moment in a Mustang.
Yes, I mean, at the end of the race, you expect them to have tyre and brake dramas, but even now they're on cold tyres, so life isn't a picnic at either end of the race for the Mustang drivers. That said, Steve Soper leads Craig Davis, who is a very handy peddler himself. The gap is 3 seconds. Third now is Taylor, so it's Mustangs 1, 2 and 3. Cortina 4, 5. Richard Dutton ahead of Marcus Jewell as they drop down through the Craner curves. And Dave Coyne, I reckon, could be one to watch because, yes, 6th, recovering after being roughed up on the opening lap. And you don't often rough up Dave Coyne. He, in turn, now, he's closing onto the back of Marcus Jewell, who really needs to keep the second of those white Cortinas in the mix. He needs to not lose too much time to give Ben Klukas a chance in the second stint.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Alex Taylor, of course, is running by himself the whole way through. So's Richard Dutton. So these two, presuming that they get everything right at the stops and everything carries on, are set now for a race-long battle between the two of them.
And Craig Davis there is another soloist. So Steve Soper needs to build this gap to see whether Henry Mann, who is not slow, I'm not suggesting he's going to crawl round, but to see whether Henry Mann can survive up front after the pit stops.
Endurance racing, don't we love it?
Absolutely,
It does make all the difference, and I mean, as you say, the Masters rules do not require you to have to share a car in these 1 hour races, but it does provide always the difference, is always the contrast.
Yes, Donington was always a popular haunt in the 80s of the European Touring Car Championship with the 3 hour races. It was here that the British Touring Car Championship used to have its 1 hour 2-driver races, for example, and here with Pre-66 touring cars, and again going to a type of racing with multi-classes, so lots of different shapes and sizes and sounds all on the grid. There, Jason Minshaw coming under attack from Tom Sharp in the BMW. Drivers both started off in modern racing. Jason Minshaw, very, very versatile, part of the Minshaw racing family. Dad Alan Minshaw has been a stalwart saloon and sports car racer for 5, 6 decades. It feels like forever, you're quite right. Now, Mark Farmer under attack, isn't he here?
Well, I was about to say, that does look as though the Studebaker, I mean, it's been developed, and the Jordan family team did a great job in getting it ready for Goodwood last year. It was its first outing, isn't it? Right? But it's really looks like a bit of a handful, doesn't it? I mean, yes, it's power slide, but it's not the most stable exit from the corners. Watch him to through Copse. The Cortina is making pace there, just on there. Look.
And Mark Farmer has not driven it much. I mean, last year it was Adrian Wilmot and Nicolas Menassian that raced it at Goodwood. Mark may well be in his very first race with this, so he's learning about it all the time as they drop down towards Roberts. Justin Law behind. Jason Minshaw there. He's catching up and he's taking Tom Sharp, and then Mark Burton with him as they come out of the chicane now, up over the line. Soper up front is still leading the way, 4.4 seconds to the good. Now, where does Justin Law find a way through? Justin, we know, specialises in Jaguars, whether they're Group C or Jaguar Mark IIs from early days of touring car racing. And right now, with the Cortina, he's giving chase. 34 Cortina, that's the Sean Balfe car. Sean, very good GT and sports car racer as well. So I
think this is his first time in that car.
Might well be.
As you say, Balfe Motorsports, very well-known preparation company. The boss himself having an outing here, but more used to big wide slick tyres and big GT3 cars than anything else. And classic Mini versus Cortina, absolutely classic overtake there by a Mini, the right way in the exit of the lower S's there, underneath the bridge and away. Not underneath the bridge, you know what I mean?
Yes, where there was a bridge once upon a time. Yes.
And there was once a commentary position down there, wasn't there, where young Tyro commentators could spend a very sweaty afternoon.
It was shaped like a spark plug, and it was fine until it was a very hot day when you were in a sauna. So people used to come and take the windows out and give you some ventilation, and that was great, unless it was the European Grand Prix weekend where it was really hot on the Saturday and they took the windows out and didn't put them back in for Sunday.
And it poured with rain.
Paul Truswell and I shared that box for the day. We were wetter than a mermaid's flannel by the end of it. It was all deeply unpleasant. That blue Mini, Endaf Owens, by the way, with that great move down at the old hairpin. Endaf came from the Mini 7 Racing Club Mini Melia Championship, in which he was always a force to be reckoned with into historic mini racing, and the Welshman is a great character, and he's gaining places all the time, chasing after Dan Wheeler, my tailor, the Dread clothing boss.
Exactly. Dan Wheeler's been a great Masters regular for a number of years, and Dread clothing supplies many of the race teams across all British motorsport formula, do they not? The Cortina's having a tremendous battle, but that overtake with the Mini was an absolute classic. Nice move by Endaf. That's exactly how you drive a Mini quickly, just throw it completely bananas sideways, like that, thank you very much, in order to make the point, and you will dive down the inside of a Cortina, which will then probably eat you on the straight. But anyway, interesting also, just at the back of that group of the Mini and Cortinas is a relative newcomer to the Mustang field, and Mark Burton is that?
Yeah.
And he is doing a nice job. Sharp in the BMW, the BMW Tisa, car number 180, that has not made as much progress forward as we've been hoping for.
So there you've got the race second and third battle. Craig Davis just ahead of Alex Taylor, and that's coming down, isn't it? 0.7 of a second now between those two.
I don't know if you noticed, but the yellow Taylor Mustang, David, has painted on the door the name of Trevor Taylor. And I'm thinking that that is not coincidental. Is there a family connection? Trevor Taylor, of course, was Jim Clark's teammate in the Lotus Grand Prix team in the early 60s, famous for wearing yellow overalls and a yellow helmet, and that's why I'm perhaps putting two and two together to make. But it says on the side of the car, Alex Taylor, Trevor Taylor. Right. And if so, young Alex is certainly knowing how to throw the car around.
So there he's got himself onto the back of Craig Davis, all of which enables, of course, Steve Soper to get away a little bit further, because you've got this squabble going on for second place. Further back, Jason Minshaw is still making good progress. Mark Farmer is trying to fend off the attack of assorted Cortinas. The dust is kicked up by Jason Minshaw, but they're all ganging up on the Studebaker now. Look, you've got Cortina, BMW, there's a Mini hidden in there somewhere, yes. Down to the chicane at Roberts they come. Also on his toes in the midst of all of this is Mark Burton. I think the Mini, in fairness, is being lapped, is it? No, not necessarily. That is William Drydle's Mini. No, that's on the lead lap. That's good. So that's...
car number 50, yes, he's still on the lead lap, isn't he? He's in 13th position. So what we're looking at here is, 7th right through to 13th, and a nice little battle here. Getting quite crowded down there, round the outside, I'm impressed. And the BMW are going to try and do it as well in order to set up a position for coming down the Estes. Like that.
So round the outside goes Tom Sharp, place gain. So Mark Farmer here is dropping away, isn't he? We've talked about the fact that he's new to the car, that it's still being sorted, and it ain't going quite as well as he wants. It's giving Adrian Wilmot a lot of work to do. Now this typifies pre-66 touring car racing. Yank Tank versus impudent little Cooper S. It's almost in the boot of the American Studebaker as they head up now towards McLean's, but William Drydle is looking for a way past. He's going to have to try and do it in a very brave fashion, under braking, but of course he can brake about half an hour after the Studebaker for the chicane.
And the difference in the weight of the car and the requirement for the braking is about a quarter of the weight of the Studebaker. Yes, I mean, and that is exactly how it was in the 1960s, and those of us who were in very short trousers at the time could watch this happening at Silverstone and at Goodwood and at Brands Hatch exactly the same period. Sir Gawain Bailey versus a Paddy Hopkirk or whatever it might have been. But that is a very neatly driven Mini. The BMW is now, I think, closing in, and Sharp looks as though he's up into 10th now. He's Justin Law in front of him, and then the Melling Minshaw car, or Jason Minshaw wheel at the moment. I think probably that car would be reasonable to say will go a little bit slower in the second half of the race. David, we've been so excited about all this, but we've got 48 minutes to go.
Indeed, and a lot can yet happen. And actually, Steve Soper's gap is not escalating that markedly, is it? It's still only 4.7 seconds as they issue the Drydle Mini, but Soper's not disappeared into the distance.
And I'm afraid we were just being nice about Sharp and the BMW, and how nice it was to see the sole BMW in the race going well, and I fear he is pulling off, and that looks as though Sharp is dropping out.
It does indeed, so that's a great shame because that car was well placed, and William Drydle now dropping away on the powery bits from the Studebaker, but under braking he'll claw himself back into contention. Now we've had the change for second place because you'll see in the background Alex Taylor's yellow Mustang is through, but Steve Soper 5.1 seconds clear, and that's a sad sight.
Yes, that is a shame. Car 180, the BMW being driven by Ed Sharp, had really gone very nicely indeed, but he's pulled off there down where, well, down by the old commentary position where the bridge once was. Soper looking very much content in beautiful drifting of that car. It clearly set up. We saw the interview with him earlier on, and Steve Soper was saying that the car had been only finished in its rebuild fairly recently after its monumental shunt at Brands Hatch last season, but he's obviously quite happy with the way it's handling at the moment. It drifts it through copse and heads on back. Oh, look at that. Isn't that elegant?
It is. And Steve Soper knows what he's doing.
He was coming from McLean's two cops, excuse me.
Yeah.
But
oh, beautiful. He's out on his own now. You just have a play, but spectacular it is, but he needs to be building the lead.
Yes, do you know, I'm not entirely sure that the Taylor-Davis battle isn't closing in on Steve.
It dropped 2/10 last time, but, you know, Steve hasn't pulled away that markedly, like I said a lap or two ago, and these two have held each other up. So now if Alex Taylor can just edge away from Craig Davis, let's have a look. Steve Soper has done the fastest lap of the race thus far. That lap, it is growing. It's gone up to 5.8 seconds, and we're getting our first track limits penalty. Paddy Shovlin is being given a penalty, a 5-second penalty for track limit abuse.
Well, do you know, we've seen a lot of that, and it's been the great discussion since the first Grand Prix last weekend. Everybody's been talking about track limits. On a proper circuit with just grass, track limits is less of an issue. But it was the case certainly in Bahrain, and will very much be the case down at Paul Ricard, where many of these cars are themselves going to race later on in the year, where really what is the track limit and what is the edge of the circuit and where is it? You know there, if you're off there and you get your 2 wheels on the grass, that's going to catch you out as you try and go down the craners.
And Paddy Shovelin has just pitted, in fact, so not only has he been off the road, he's got a problem as well. So the JRT Cortina is into the pit lane as William Drydle flings the Cooper S down through the old hairpin, closes on the back of Mark Farmer. Now Jason Minshaw in the meantime, he's having a good scrap here with Justin Law, and the tail wagging Falcon I think was ahead, trying to sort of swat aside the Cortina as it went up towards McLean's. There's the Mini of Drydle. Yes, Jason Minshaw is ahead, so Justin Law's Cortina now has to find a way past this aircraft carrier ahead of him. He can probably do that heading into the chicane, because again he can brake that bit later.
I mean, when you see it like that, the Falcon is a big car, isn't it?
And the Cooper S up the inside, and then he just has to wave goodbye because Mark Farmer just flicks up a gear and will drive away. Yes, and the Mini's going to get mugged by the Mustang of Mark Burton into the bargain as Minshaw locks up. Actually, he hung on to the place, so Burton goes ahead of Drydle. Mustang ahead of Cooper S. 44 minutes to go, and we're not done yet by a long chalk. Right, where's Jason Minshaw? He's 7th, and actually he's the quicker of the 2, isn't he, out of Martin Melling, the car's owner. Jason is faster.
Oh yes, by a bit, without being rude to Martin Melling. He really enjoys his collection of cars, and which he normally does share with Jason Minshaw. But no, I don't think he'd say he was expecting to do a lap time the same as Jason. But on the other hand, we also don't know how other people's cars are going to slow as things begin to, as you say, wear out a bit. That is always a problem. For instance, with the Falcon, as it thunders up the hill, making that wonderful noise.
Also getting quite a few early retirements into the pits, which is disappointing, but just wonderful to see cars going sideways, isn't it? Yes, in modern day touring car racing you do have rear-wheel drive cars, but if you're going sideways you're losing precious tenths of a second, so you don't do it. But in this era, narrow tyres as well, everybody's sliding around, it just makes for a great spectacle. Now there into the pit lane is the Ashley Davis Mini. Paddy Shovelin's Cortina was a suspected puncture, that's why he came in, by the way.
And did he manage to change the tyre? I didn't see that.
Not sure.
No.
I think he's gone back out. Yes, he has.
127, yes, and a bit of a discussion going on and some disappointment, and that looks as though that is just a fueling problem, fiddling with the carburetors there.
Right, Jason Minshaw over the line, still 7th. Having said that Steve Soper wasn't pulling away markedly, he now is. He's building this lap after lap, so benefiting a little bit from that battle, maybe, but after it's sorted itself out, strangely, maybe it's because the car's getting lighter on fuel and tyres are getting hotter, the gap is widening. Treble 8 is Dan Wheeler, and he now is a retirement, sadly, as well in the Mini. You get the feeling that many of these cars, after their enforced break, are rather wishing that they'd had a bit more time to be fettled.
Yes, I was just thinking that, yes, that Dan resignedly takes his balaclava off and will chat to the marshals till the end of the race then. But a lot of these cars have literally just been laid up, and a lot of people didn't get out last year for a variety of reasons. Though towards the August-September period, when we were still allowed to be outside playing, there were a number of race events, famously Goodwood of course, but also the Spa event did happen.
That's right, yeah.
A big celebration of European historic racing annually in September at Spa. So one has to hope that people feel that they've got their cars exercised. Masters will be doing another all-British, if you like, round of their championships at Brands Hatch at the end of May. And so the thing to do at the moment is to hope that if you've not yet started your historic racing, come and join in as soon as possible.
That Mini 127 we saw in the pits a little while ago, that was brakes, incidentally, or lack of, that has done for that. Now Craig Davis is coming back, isn't he, at Alex Taylor for second place here. So nose to tail, 99 is Alex Taylor, 9 is Craig Davis, and the pair of them virtually as one. All of this playing into the hands of Steve Soper again.
Yeah, I mean, it looks as though Steve is, a good half-second quicker on his quickest lap than the man in second and third place, both of them, who are lapping very, very close times together. But 122.8 is Steve's best time, which in a Mustang round the Donington Park National Circuit is an impressive time, a really impressive time.
It is indeed, isn't it? And Craig Davis trying to get his second place back. It's interesting, isn't it? He was caught and passed by Taylor, but he's not dropped away. He's kept him on his toes. So we are about 5 minutes away from that pit window opening as the cars come over the timing line. It's a narrow window of just 10 minutes. They dive down then to Redgate as Minshaw from Law, from Farmer, from Burton squabble over 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th places here.
Yes, well, that's some reward for them entertaining us so much in this battle, because they've all moved up a couple of places, haven't they, what with one thing and another, but still at it. And having said the Studebaker was falling back and slowing, since he dropped back into that position now, he's been hanging on there pretty comprehensively. But with 2 more Mustangs to come, and then the pair of Minis, they've gone very well indeed, haven't they?
They have, yes. I mean, part of this as well, we talk about looking after the machinery, but it is a serious point. You can see how many people have had dramas early on. If you look after the car, keep out of trouble, you will be there at the finish and you could score you could finish quite well.
And that is a feature of an endurance race, is it not? And you keep going and you keep going and you keep going.
So down through the Craner curves here, the Mustang in the middle of all of this is 321 Graham Langford, who go back a long time with a Porsche racer, and he in turn has got number 72 tucked up behind him. Roy Alderslade, another of the Jordan Racing Team prepared cars. Roy going solo, only started racing last year, had a big accident at Brands in his Mini in his first race, but then has really got the bug. He's got different cars, including a Daytona Cobra. Should have raced yesterday, and there you've got for second place Craig Davis, now crawling all over the back of Alex Taylor. Traffic up the road, which is going to become a factor of the next 38 minutes. Helps Taylor, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that really has been a difference. I mean, suddenly he's dropped 5-6 car lengths or more just as a result of just being in the wrong position to try and get around the Cortina. If you're noticing that a lot of Cortinas are painted exactly the same, there's a reason for that. It was the cream colour with the green stripe was the actual Lotus Grand Prix team's version of the Lotus Cortina. And if you want to look like Jim Clark when racing your Lotus Cortina, you have to paint it that colour, that's right.
Understeer and off the road, Alex Taylor, and it's cost him second place. Understeers out wide, runs out of road, and it's a place gained back for Craig Davis. Then he's back up into second spot, and Alex Taylor has got to do all of that hard work all over again, and Craig Davis nearly gives it back to him by doing the same thing coming out of Coppets, but he just survives it.
Do we think there's something slippy on the track that suddenly surprised both of them? Because
sure.
One corner after another, or perhaps yeah, Craig Davis was so busy celebrating the fact he'd popped back in as he turned away from Copse and back onto the return straight, because Taylor's coming straight back at him now as they come down towards the breaking point for Redgate. Who's going to dip the nose first?
Taylor goes through on the inside. Look at Dave Coyne in the background, because he's almost back with these two, and that is Mark Farmer at McLean, so he has had a drama. Maybe there is something on the road that's suddenly catching them out. There's also, by the look of it, a demolished marker board there. Back into second place goes then Craig Davis, and has Alex Taylor got a problem, because he seemed to lose pace there going through Hollywood?
He did, didn't he? I'm just trying to see, was something loose at the back of the Studebaker.
Mark Farmer gets away, Steve Soper goes through. Look back, who's going to be second? There's Craig Davis, then it's Alex Taylor, so might have been a missed gear. He's still circulating. 98 Cortina goes through, that's Graham Pattle, and Taylor again is sideways as he tries to hustle on, but Steve Soper's advantage now has really grown to well over 8.5 seconds.
Yes, having made my great point about the colouring of the Lotus Cortinas, Graham Pattle came into shot and showed us exactly that you can have it another colour if you like.
Indeed, if you've got the time and effort.
Yes, that's right.
Richard Dutton fifth, he's the leading Cortina at the moment, ahead of Marcus Jewell to round out the top six, as the Mustangs concertina at the Robert Chicane. Alex Taylor back onto the gas, comes out now over the timing line with Craig Davis just up the road ahead, but Steve Soper is now 8.8 seconds to the good.
Yes, so he's opened up 2 or 3 more seconds than the last time we noticed the gap, and so this. Whoa, do you know, you've got not quite halfway through the race, guys, and if that is the state of your tyres now as you turn into Redgate, I hate to think of that. Everybody's got a bit of a wiggle on at the moment, haven't they? I mean, the track will get a little bit greasier with all this activity on it, but I don't think anyone's dropped a great deal of oil, do you?
No. of course, one of the other factors of Donington that drivers always talk about is jettisoned aircraft fuel. Well, there ain't a lot of that at the moment because there aren't a lot of flights.
Don't ever say there is jettisoned aircraft fuel at Donington. It's one of the great urban myths, or perhaps rural myths, we should say. I remember we spent a lot of time with a great big research project.
Really?
Yeah, that proved that absolutely there was never any avgas. I mean, it's just don't happen. Jet fuel. It's always a good story, but given the nature of the competitiveness of the aircraft industry, they very rarely drop fuel as they come into land at East Midlands Airport.
Well, there you go. That's taken one excuse out of the racing driver's book. You know.
It has, absolutely. I've always doubted that story. Mark Hales, who is in this race very much so, the noted journalist, always used to add that to his race reports, and I always used to write it out. That's not the case.
So with 34 minutes to go, the pit window is now open. So are we expecting people in? Yes, we are. And there, look, Marcus Jewell in early to give way to the very rapid Ben Klukas. Ben was in, 2002, one of the stars of the Junior Formula Ford Championship, because we still had a Junior Formula 4 Championship in those days. But even though he raced successfully in Australia for a time, he's always been underrated, never had the funding, but has found a happy home of late as a gun for hire in historic racing, and does a really good job. So you watch him in that Cortina in the second stint. It'll be a car that comes alive. As there, Mark Burton gets up on the inside of Sean Balf's Cortina, rounding Redgate together, and the Mustang should just go through.
He made it. Nice, but I think he's Sean is not about to admit. Isn't that elegant? Have you spotted the Ford drifting through the S? Is exactly what we want to see.
Richard Dutton, Dave Coyne, and also Marcus Jewell being given 5 seconds penalty for track limits. So just been talking about some of these leading drivers. Well, they're copping penalties. We've got to factor in at the end of the race as well.
Well, please keep reminding us that that's the case, because as we get towards the end of the race, that may become really quite important. Track limits being properly enforced, and for good reason. But as we were just saying, that is the natural way of driving one of these cars.
Yeah.
And on the way out, if you're consistently doing it, that's when the clerk of the course will issue a track limits penalty.
Right, there's Jason Minshaw locking up, trying to get the thing slowed down for Robert Chicane.
Yes, and he's going to bring that in and hand it over to the car's owner in due course, saying, I'm sorry that the front left is a little bit of a threepenny bit now.
Yes, indeed. Comes under attack then as the cars come over the line, and the Mustang there coming up to have a go. Got Justin Law in the background. That Mustang is trying to recover its position lost earlier on, is it not? David, the number 65, yes. Alex Thistlethwaite's Mustang it is, now in 7th place. Just watching the cars darting across the road as they fight for control. Number 50 Mini to the pit lane. That is the William Drydell car that we witnessed doing great things early on. He can stay in the car because he's a soloist. In the pit lane, though, you can see that serving its regulation stop, Mark Farmer giving way to Adrian Wilmot.
In the Studebaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the... Yes, more people will find themselves being track limited if they carry on doing that. But, yes, all getting very tight. And the Studebaker's just pulling out onto the track again, and you're expecting to see some fireworks there.
And Henry Mann is getting ready. I've just seen him walk across the pit wall, to the pit wall rather, ready to give the signal to the mechanics to give the pit board. There's an old-fashioned phrase, a pit board, to Steve Soper to say, come in. And a very crossed-up Cortina is that of Richard Dutton, the penalised Richard Dutton. So any Fortec single-seater driver is going to have great delight in telling the boss.
Exactly. I mean, Fortec's premises in Daventry, extremely impressive. I mean, Richard's team as Fortec have dominated in everything from Renault 3.5, European Renault, Formula 4, Formula 3. He also ran a 3000 team, and then much experience as a team manager, and then decided to start racing. He was being asked to have his boys prepare historic cars, and he thought, I may as well have a go myself.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to the late 70s, he was a pretty rapid Formula 4 2000 driver, but historic racing tempted him back out, and his old mate Neil Brown, like you said earlier on, shared with him, and then bought his own cars, and yes, whenever he can, Richard is out on the circuit. That's Sean Balfe giving way to Tom Ashton, and the pit board has gone out to Steve Soper to say in, but he's not yet come in, whereas Alex Taylor's yellow Mustang has come down the pit road.
And he is doing it by himself.
Yeah, there he is.
So he's going to hold on. His team waiting for him. Rossler Racing. And just check everything. Have a chance to check it over. The pit lane's going to get very crowded. With the foreshortened look here, it always looks as though these cars must be right on top of each other and someone's done some neat parking. But this is the way, because the pit window is really quite narrow, isn't it? There's only 10 minutes to do it.
The reason for that narrow window is to make sure that the owner of the car does a reasonable amount of the distance, because what you used to have was, if you like, a 20 to 40 minute window, the gun for hire, the hot shoe doing as much of 40 minutes as possible. Mini in the gravel, that could bring out an interruption to the race, let's wait and see. But by having 25 to 35 minutes, it means that the slower driver still has to make a big contribution to the result.
Yes.
Now that Cooper S in the gravel is up at Coppice, and I just wonder whether we might end up with a safety car to get that out safely, and indeed if that's the case, that's going to ruin the advantage that Steve Soper had built.
I was about to say, it's also going to make a big difference to everybody's tactics who haven't yet come and completed. How much longer left on the pit window?
It'll be about 4 minutes, won't it?
Yes, not very much longer. So I don't think that Mini's moving from there,
no,
do you? Not under its own, even with the excellent front-wheel drive. He was deeply embedded in the gravel.
That's a very, very smart Cortina, isn't it? Graham Pattle's car.
Yeah, and he is coming in for his stop now too. Yeah. Indeed, everybody is trying to make sure that they do that. Get that out of the way.
Steve Soper, we are still waiting for.
And the yellow Mustang is back out again.
Right, so that's Alex Taylor. 105.3 seconds, remember, is a lap and a lot.
Yes, if you're doing call it 125 to make an average lap. So it isn't very nearly a lap. Here is car number 6, our race leader.
There is Steve Soper then, coming up through Coppice Corner now, working his way through the traffic. And he needs to be careful about this, because with it being a tight pit window, you can't afford to leave it too late.
He must come in this time. Box, 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 I think would be the cry if there was any ship to shore, which there shouldn't be.
Right, so as you say, the pit lane is pretty crowded. You've got the Chris Clarkson, David Smithies, Falcon in, Martin Melling and Jason Minshaw. There is the race leader, Steve Soper, comes in now then, so Henry Mann is ready to take over. The team will greet him and say, stop here. There's Henry Mann. He rushes out with the white crash helmet on, the white overalls.
Very interesting. That's not their pit, so to speak. They're much further down. They've decided to move right up to the top end of the pit lane, because they too thought it was all looking a bit crowded. Henry Mann in the open face helmet, which his father would approve of, I'm sure, is and we have indeed got the Mini number 50, which had been going really nicely, hadn't it? That's a shame.
The good thing here is that it's able to keep the race going, so the marshals, well done, have been able to get that out of the way without the need to neutralise the race. Steve Soper gives way there to Henry Mann. Craig Davis is in. Dave Coyne is in to give way to John Miles. Jason Minshaw has given way to Martin Melling. So you can anticipate a very shuffled order as we get into this second stint. 26 minutes and counting still to run, but now which drivers are quicker or slower than their co-drivers? Which cars are going to rise and fall up the order?
Well, I think we're about to find out, but as you say, Dave Coyne, certainly with all that experience, would expect to be quicker than the splendidly named John Miles if you're going to drive anything Ford, but not that John Miles, as they say. The bespectacled ex-Formula One test driver was the man to set up cars.
And that's Roy Alderslade going through, relative racing rookie, but doing a good job. 20th last time and 16th this time as other people pit. Mustangs are firing up beneath us in the pit lane as the pit stop window is shuffled through. Graham Pattle rejoined. You can see Craig Davis's Mustang is in. Steve Soper's car for Henry Mann to take over is there. 321 Mustang turns through. That's Graham Langford.
And Henry Mann has just pulled out of the pits from right underneath us.
Right, okay, he's away. And John Miles gets away as well now. Well, I've got to say, it still looked a bit like Dave Coyne in that car as it left the pits, but try and check number 4.
Well, they might have made a last-minute decision to stay in.
Yeah. try and get to the bottom of that. But there's number 9 then. That is Craig Davis, who has dropped back behind number 4 Mustang on the pit stops. Now that either means that one has perhaps been short or another team has made a really bad pit stop, but either way you've had a reversal there on the pit stops.
Yes, I mean, no one is pretending that timing your own pit stop in the heat of a historic race is always going to be as accurate as it might be, and it's only too easy to let a couple of seconds go slipping by without paying attention. We hope that Henry Mann also finding the Mustang a bit slippy as he exits McLean's there.
So there is Henry Mann, who's got to get into a car that's had 35 minutes or so of wear, so he's got to get used to what it feels like, what the track condition is, and also push to try and maintain the advantage, as there the owner of the Studebaker now, Adrian Wilmot, tries to dart his way through the traffic, which he succeeds almost in doing. Gets past the Falcon, now he's got to get past the Cortina of Graham Pattle. Remember that car recovering after Mark Farmer's drama in it earlier on. And while all this is going on, by the way, you've got Alex Taylor into the lead of the race now on the pit stops, ahead of Ben Klukas, then treble 7, which is Adrian Miles' Mustang that hasn't pitted, so discount that, and therefore Henry Mann is down in effectively 3rd place.
As Adrian Miles, I mean, the pit window is now closed, so is it not? That is now going to cause that car number 777, another Mustang, probably to be asked if he'd kindly pull in and have a discussion. Excellent drifting. Pull in and have a discussion with the officials, I should imagine.
But why was the Steve Soper Henry Mann pit stop so slow? Because that's, as I say, that car has now dropped into 3rd place as a result of the stops. So you've got Taylor in the yellow Mustang, 3.7 seconds ahead of Ben Klukas, whose last lap was considerably quicker, so it's game on.
There's no apparent reason why they should have been slower.
Just trying to see if I can trace what the pit stop time was. So there you've got going through the race leader, 23 minutes are on the clock, so it's the yellow Mustang versus the Cortina behind. That's the battle that we're keeping an eye to.
Pit window definitely closed, and whilst track limits penalties have been issued, I don't yet see that the car 777 has been told to come in and behave.
Now looking at this, the Soper and Mann Mustang must have had a problem in the pits, because it was 10 seconds slower than the Cortina and something like 13 seconds slower than Alex Taylor. Now I'm assuming that the good stops were legit, but certainly it looks like it was a much longer stop for Henry Mann and Steve Soper's car, and car number 3 is being given an additional 10-second penalty for track limits. That's Richard Dutton. He's already got 5, now he's being given another 10. Richard, we will never mention this again. At any TOCA meeting, at any Formula 3 meeting, rest assured it will not pass our lips.
15, yes, I mean that's going to make a proper difference to where he finishes, isn't it?
Yes.
I can imagine that there'll be some fairly specific words being offered inside his helmet.
Safety car is being deployed, so we go safety car with 21 minutes on the clock. This is going to really make things lively for the final stint of the race, and it also backs up the point we were making earlier. Put your faster driver in for the second stint in case something like this happens. There's the safety car quickly being scrambled. Graham Pattle's Cortina is the one that will be behind it, but it's not the leader. Hopefully that's going to be allowed by, and that yellow Mustang will be permitted then to head the queue. So what we now need is for the safety car crew to put a green light on and let that Cortina by quickly. Yes, it's being waved past, thank heavens for that, because otherwise it just ruins a driver's race and it's not their fault. So this time it's being done correctly, which is good to see. And so Graham Pattle tries to catch up to the Crocodile. Now, why do we have the safety car? Who has gone a-missing? Let's try and piece that together.
Well, it must be an off somewhere, because we didn't see... Oh, here we are.
Oh, it's Mark Martin, yes.
Yes, that is why, and the gravel is looking nice and deep there, isn't it?
I'm trying to work out where that is. Is that the exit of the chicane? No, possibly. It might be.
Yes.
It is, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I can see grid markings there in front. So it is the exit of the chicane, and that needs to be extricated. And I'm not sure where the recovery vehicle is, but it wouldn't normally be located there.
So it's Mark Martin's car. You saw Steve Soper's name on the door, but that's from previous races. It's not one that Steve is sharing in this race. So 20 minutes at the moment. Now all of this eats into the 20 minutes, and it's going to be a good few of them before we can go racing once again. Alex Taylor then with Ben Klukas right up behind him. It's going to be a fascinating fight between these two, isn't it, on the resumption of the race.
And we've now got the proper running order there, pretty much closing in behind. Have we got a lot of lap traffic?
I think the third place car on that queue is a lap down. That's the Melling Minshaw Falcon. But then you've got Henry Mann next in the queue. So it's not far off. There's the leader, the yellow Mustang coming into Roberts. And that's the reason for this interruption. It's Mark Martin's Cortina that is in the gravel. So it's yellow Mustang from Cortina, then the blue Falcon is a lap down, then you've got a legit fight, which is Henry Mann ahead of the John Miles, Dave Coyne Mustang. I'm still not convinced it's not Dave Coyne behind the wheel still. It just looked like Dave's frame. Yeah, I'm sure that is still Dave Coyne behind the wheel of that. Then Craig Davis 5th, Richard Dutton 6th, but that's a notional 6th because he's got more penalties than a football team. So there the cars turning now up through Redgate Corner, and as soon as that snatch vehicle can be dispatched, we should be in business to get that car out of the way.
And the little blue one is the sole surviving Mini, isn't it? After we had the grey Mini was in the gravel as well.
Yes.
Pulled back out of the way, but that where we have the car off at the moment is just exactly the wrong place and difficult to get at for the recovery vehicles. So you hope that they will be there as quick as they can in order to get that car moved. There we are.
It is. Yep.
And there is a gap there that he can take it through. There's always a moment when a proud owner of a historic car begins to look a bit twitchy.
Yes,
yes, this is where you hope that the mounting bracket for towing, which is a compulsory fixture, you did put on nice and strong, please, and you're not going to remove the whole of the front end of the car by giving it a great tug with one of those great big machines.
So we have then now the safety car completing another lap down towards the Robert chicane. So Alex Taylor has done a really impressive job in this race, but that pit stop, that longer pit stop for Henry Mann, seemingly the undoing. But of course, the safety car has helped them in a sense by bringing them back into the mix. Now there is, as I say, I'm still convinced that's Dave Coyne at the wheel going through in 4th place. And 5th is Craig Davis, and 6th on the road is Richard Dutton.
Yes, he's going to, and unfortunately for Richard, with all the penalties he's got, if everyone stays close together for the last, what will probably be 15 minutes or so of the race, he will find that he's got people within those 15 seconds behind him. So whatever it is, he needs to pull out by a little chunk.
So hopefully we can go racing pretty soon. Now, everybody has caught the cue. When the lights go out, of course, it's the indication that we can go racing at the end of that lap. We're waiting for race control to say we're in business as they thread their way through the Craner curves once more. Out of Hollywood, which I notice over recent years at Donington has become Hollywood rather than 2 words, which it always was, but somewhere there's been a corruption.
It should be Hollywood.
Absolutely,
exactly.
yes.
And if you buy the book now out about Donington before the war, to see the actual photographs of what was clearly a big wood full of holly trees,
right?
You will get the picture. It's a fascinating story, the complete story of motorsport at Donington Park in the period from the original opening in 31 through to the outbreak of war in September 39, and of course the famous Grand Prix.
Absolutely right.
And the Mercedes and the auto unions on some of the circuit that we're looking at now. Not all of it, but some of the circuit. Revived in 1977 by the late great Tom Wheatcroft, and safety car lights out,
So we can go racing this time, can't we?
And Taylor very subtly, or perhaps not terribly subtly, holding everyone up so that he can, choose the moment in which he chooses to go. It is across the line. It should be across the line before you can start racing again. But when Henry Mann's got to hope that, you see...
But look, Martin Melling has held him up pretty badly there because he was not on his toes. The top two were, and Henry Mann can't overtake him until he gets to the timing line, which is now. So now he's on the loud pedal, but that's really not helped at all.
Melling is going to go for it anyway, because he's got the grunt.
And Dave Coyne up the inside, and he goes third. Brilliant. And Craig Davis comes along to mug Henry Mann as well. So rather than be attacking, he's lost 2 places to the Mustangs.
And that was really solely due to the fact that the lapped car was in the way, and that's a shame. But it's going to give us a 3-way battle for second place. But it does look as though young Taylor is gone, doesn't it?
It does.
Disappeared up the road.
Yeah, but he's got Ben Klukas with him. So now you've got the grunt of the Mustang versus the nimbleness of the Cortina. Look, there they are together. But Dave Coyne, I'm utterly convinced that's him in the car. He's in third place. You've seen the racecraft and getting up into third spot with all due deference to John Miles. Dave Coyne now might be able to go after the top 2 as they accelerate up towards Coppice there. Ben Klukas to the outside line. Alex Taylor would have wanted that safety car to be out for another quarter of an hour really to protect him, but right now he is being given a really big workover. This bit is Mustang territory. Long, fast, straight, gap widens. Now you're coming to Cortina territory because he can brake later and Ben Klukas is right on his tail. Out of the chicane, up through the gears, down towards Redgate, and if these two get themselves together, what's going on behind? Well, it was Dave Coyne. He's dropped back now, has he not? Because look, as they come over the timing line, it is now in third place Craig Davis. Coyne is back down to fourth. Can they catch this lead battle with 13 and a half on the clock?
You have to say that Klukas, that's some really great driving, isn't it? Because just down the pit straight there, he was absolutely right behind him. Get out of the wind, get in there, fling it through the S's, just as he has done. Fling it through the S's, and let's hope we don't have any track limits penalties for these two, because this is going to be... Ben Klukas is going to spend the next 12 minutes or so trying to work out where is the way that he might be able to get past.
It's got to be under braking, surely. Can he benefit from another mistake? Alex Taylor went off the road here early on, so he might be susceptible to pressure. The Cortina right on the tail. So remember, Ben, from things like Formula Ford 1600 as well as sports car racing and GT cars, we'll see him out in other machinery in the day. Gets up the inside at Coppice. Is that the job done, or will the power of the Mustang put him back ahead? Cortina ahead for the moment, but now Alex Taylor weaves one way and then the other. The road opens up. He's going to get back into the lead, but what about under braking? Back in front goes the Cortina. Wonderful.
Perfect. That's a classic example of the difference between the two types of car, isn't it? And that's absolutely wonderful.
Fantastic. A sideways Craig Davis pendulums his way out of the chicane. Henry Mann has got through up ahead, except Henry Mann is being given a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. No. Henry Mann fourth over the line, a drive-through for speeding in the pits.
A drive-through. Well, that's that.
Whether it was on the way in or the way out, whether it was Steve or Henry, we don't know.
Steve came in very slowly and stopped right at the top of the pit lane. It must have been on the way out, and that is a shame.
Yeah, I mean, maybe having had a long stop, there was a touch of red mist, or red and gold mist. Anyway, drive-through penalty is being given. A 72 Cortina there. Roy Elderslade loses out to the Endaf Owens Mini. Where's Endaf got himself to now? That puts him into the top 10. Brilliant, this, isn't it?
And we've got the Battle of the Falcons there going on as well. I don't know if you noticed, two huge, as you called them earlier on, aircraft carriers making their way down through the S's, wiggling along behind each other. That's
there's not enough room, surely. Oh, and a Mini on the Mustang. Graham Langford gets mugged almost there in the background. Crikey. 53, that was the Mini of Phil Pullen Brown. Thought he was brave. Right, 72 Cortina. Roy Elderslade in the JRT prepped car, getting on with the job here. And Ben Klukas leads the way, remember, after that very, very brave move. What have we got? 11 minutes. This is one of those races where you want someone to hide the checkered flag.
And car 77 has also been given a stop-go penalty for missing the pit window. Well, we thought that was the case, but he was obviously enjoying himself, and he'll be able to tell his friends in the pub, when the pub opens, that he was lying third in a touring car race at Donington Park.
Well, there, over the line, is Mark Burton, who is in 8th place, and we've got 10 minutes to go of what's been a very entertaining hour of Pre-66 Masters touring car racing. To the inside line goes 132 Adrian Wilmot, trying to gain ground. But Ben Klukas, having hit the front, is getting away.
Yeah, I'm not sure that car 777 has actually seen and obeyed the steward's instructions to come in for his stop-go penalty there, because he's right in the middle of a mass of Cortinas.
Yes.
And since he clearly wasn't watching his pit signals earlier on that said pit window now open, I think he may also find that driving a Mustang is enough, keeping him busy and not watching too much of the...
Alex Taylor's Mustang parked there behind Tom Sharp's BMW.
No.
So we've lost the yellow Mustang out of 2nd place.
I missed it.
So it has parked. There it is. Real shame. He's okay. The car is not. And Alex Taylor, very disappointed, trudges away after what had been a really impressive drive.
A very, very impressive drive in the yellow Mustang, and it will be interesting to find out what happened there, but clearly a mechanical problem. He's not hit the barrier anyway, he's pulled off safely out of the way, which leaves Klukas in charge in a Cortina, with Davis in the Mustang looking to have another go.
And Adrian Wilmot has a go at Mark Burton as they come out of the chicane. So Mark, former one-mate racer, slots in behind the ex-FF 1600 hot shoe, down towards Redgate Corner. Behind the pair of them in the Cortina fight is Tom Ashton in the red over white Balf car. There it is, number 34. And then Roy Alderslade, who's been brought back into the mix with the safety car, and Endaf Owens in that cheeky Mini is almost up with them. I reckon Endaf, who is currently in 11th place, might do better than that by the end. Adrian Miles there serves his drive-through penalty.
I did him a disfavour, then he had actually seen the instruction and he obeyed it. Just remember, of course, that it's much harder for clerks and stewards to control this form of racing because there is no Sydney Shore radio permitted. It's very easy in modern touring car racing or GT racing or whatever to just have a word direct from the clerk of the course to the car and say, you better come in, Sonny, there's a problem. But not possible in historics, and for all the best reasons. Everything should be as much like it was in period as possible.
And of course, many of the messages these days go on a timing screen. Well, this is club racing, and old school club racing in a sense. They don't have timing screens on the pit wall. They're on Pratt perches like you see in other categories, so it's all very well putting it on the screen, but if people don't have a screen, it ain't going to do you much good. Paddy Shovelin is being given another 10-second penalty for track limit abuse. I think he got 5 earlier on, so he is also drawing attention.
His 16th place, I think, David, is going to disappear down a little bit. Yes. On the scoring.
Yes, soon be known as Monday. That far back. Yeah. Right. So Ben Klukas leads Craig Davis by 3 seconds. That's Henry Mann, who is now 4th. He's dropped back behind Dave Coyne, and he's got to serve a drive-through anyway, Henry Mann. So he's not yet got that message, I don't think. And Richard Dutton is with 15 seconds worth of penalties. And then the next Cortina is a lap down and has got penalties anyway, Paddy Shovelin's car. So there's a lot to change here. Whoops, big slide from Henry Mann, sawing away at the wheel as he heads out of McLean's up to Coppice, chasing after there the Dave Coyne, John Miles' own Mustang.
Yes, Henry is normally a very quick peddler and been very quick in all sorts of cars in historic touring car racing over the year. I guess that there's a little bit of a problem going on in that cockpit there at the moment, and as you say, he's still got to serve the drive-through penalty.
Trouble is, I don't think he knows he's got a drive-through, because I'm watching his pit crew. Now, they don't have a screen, so there is no way that they know he's got a drive-through unless the officials themselves are hanging down a drive-through penalty board. He ain't going to know.
Which I presume they are doing, and we can't see from our commentary position the flag position right at the start of the pit lane. But as you say, I can see his mechanics hanging out the signs to him, but they're not saying in. No. Because,
as I say, they have no idea about that because they don't have a timing screen and they're a bit busy and they're not watching a live stream of us either. Right, Endaf Owens on the back of Tom Ashton. Mini versus Cortina. This now is for 9th and 10th places, and that's Paddy Shovelin's rather smoky Cortina coming out of the old hairpin.
No, I think he'd had a proper moment, I think.
Right.
I think he had spun it and was feeling a little embarrassed as he accelerated away. This is a proper battle now.
Yeah. Well, kind of, but it's going to be affected by penalties because Henry Mann is either going to serve that drive-through or be given a time penalty post-race. So the Dave Coyne Mustang drifts out wide and blasts now down towards the chicane. That's Paddy Shumlin, who's been off again by the look of it.
It looked to me as though that was dropping fuel.
Yeah, I'm concerned about that car having been doing things at the old hairpin.
Yeah.
Something might be on the road now. We'll find out in a few moments when these cars, fresh to the corner, arrive at the old hairpin. It could be quite interesting down there. Right, so over the line, you've got Klukas ahead of Craig Davis by 5 seconds. This is for third on the road. Henry Mann versus Dave Coyne. He goes back through on the inside line. Sideways, drifts it. You can hear the tar squeal in the background as they hit the top of the Craner curves now through Hollywood. Neither Mustang looking particularly settled, it's got to be said. Now this is the next part of the circuit where we're a bit concerned. This is where Shumlin was having a moment. If there's anything on the road, they're about to find out. Henry Mann gets sideways, but no more than any other lap.
Richard Dutton continued to enjoy himself, perhaps in happy ignorance of the amount of time that's going to be dotted up at him. But with 15 seconds on top of where he is at the moment, is he still going to be clear of Thistlethwaite, who's in second position?
No, he's going to lose at least 2, I would have thought. So
yeah.
He's going to fall down to a provisional 7th. But again, you've got the penalty for Henry Mann as well, which I think will become 30 seconds post-race if you don't serve a drive-through. That's normally how it worked. So he's getting away this time, Henry Mann, from Dave Coyne. There is Craig Davis going through the chicane, chasing after Ben Klukas. It was 5 seconds last time.
Klukas has been extremely impressive, has he not? I mean, because to put 5 seconds on a well-driven Mustang in your Cortina is, yes, these two are probably not making many friends in the race control, I think.
Well, Dave Coyne, always a fighter, back through on the inside, goes through again to 3rd place as a lock-up from Roy Alderslade. He's gained a spot at the expense of Tom Ashton going into the chicane there. 3 minutes and change on the clock. The lead gap is coming down. It was 5.1, it's now 4.5. Craig Davis is closing, but I'm not sure he's going to get there in time.
Still just over 3 minutes to run, and the end of the exact time and the exact hour, then of course obviously to complete the lap to come round to the checkered flag from wherever you may be at that point, which at around 1 minute 25 per lap is more difficult than I can work out really by way of the mathematics.
So as the cars come now down through the Craner curves, 35 is Mark Burton. This is 8th place, and Roy Alderslade, belying his relative lack of racing experience, did a good job for 9th, and then Tom Ashton rounding out the top 10. That's the race leader. That is Ben Klukas, whose last lap was a 23.9. He has set the car's best at a 23.5, so he's being pretty consistent in those lap times. Where's Craig Davis? There he is in the background. 2.5 minutes, 2 more laps I offer you, and it was 4 seconds last time, 4.5. It's down by 10, so I think Ben Klukas has got just enough in hand.
Yep. I think he has, and he's looking very confident. But this race has been full of surprises, and lost a leader. Shame about Taylor in the yellow Mustang. That was going very nicely.
Right there, beautifully drifting it down through the craters. It's Craig Davis. Sets the car up for the old hairpin. Loves big, powerful Fords. Got not only Mustangs, but also GT40 and Sierra RS 500s. There lower down is the Burton Alderslade Ashton battle, with Endaf Owens in the background running in 11th place.
These guys have had a tremendous race, haven't they? Endaf's done really well to keep in there with that. The sheer physical effort of chucking a Mini around is probably greater than the Cortinas. Heavy work in the Mustangs there.
Yeah. Now there Roy Alderslade locks up, clobbers the curb on the inside, but there was no real proper opportunity there to make a go against Mark Burton. What he really needs to make sure he doesn't do is leave the door open for Tom Ashton to go through. They're fighting for 3rd in class, those two Cortinas. We're tending to look at this in overall situation. Ben Klukas leads his class as well as leading outright. Of course, his Cortina well clear of the opposition.
Dutton is probably okay for... He is going to lose 2 places, isn't he, at the end, with all those 15 seconds. Hello.
Going back in the right direction there is David Smithies. Yeah, Richard Dutton might hang on to 2nd in class, but he will drop down overall as we're into the last minute of the race. And the lead gap 4.9 has gone up again, so Ben Klukas is on his last lap, I reckon now.
Yeah. on that one.
So there, this great line of traffic still pours over the line. And that's the race leader with, yes, the checkered flag imminent for him. Ben Klukas, I said it would be one to watch, and Marcus Jewell did it right, did the minimum first stint, kept the car in the mix, but out of trouble. A good pit stop. Ben Klukas gets behind the wheel and, as you expect, drives really well.
Yes, he has driven really nicely as he comes through McLean's and back onto the back straight for the last time.
So
that'll work out perfectly for him, in fact, won't it? The hour is now precisely up. We have Ben Klukas approaching the line.
And after that battle with Alex Taylor ran out of fuel, we understand. It is a win for Marcus Jewell and Ben Klukas, who comes across the line to take the checkered flag. The Cortina triumphs against the Yank Tanks, but who is going to be second? Because as they come up towards the line, who breaks the beam first? It is going to be the Craig Davis Mustang, putting a lap there on the slower Mustang at the very end. For third place, Dave Coyne, ahead of Henry Mann, but as I say, he's got that drive-through that was not served, so a notional fourth for number 6 Mustang. Richard Dutton's fifth, but with penalties to be applied, and then sixth will be there Alex Thistlethwaite, keeping ahead just of Adrian Wilmot, and the margin between them was 0.152 of a second at flagfall. How about that?
Quite right too, that's very nice, isn't it? And as they then come across the line, that's Burton then in 8th, the Balfe Ashton car across in 9th, and Ray Alderslade in 10th place in a pretty much a first outing in that Jordan-built Cortina.
Yeah, the Studebaker, another Jordan-built car, and that's in 7th spot. Still the flag waves, still the traffic pours through. That's about the only lonely pair of drivers, I think, having been at the very back of it, namely Graham Pattle in the Cortina coming through just there. But Marcus Jewell and Ben Klukas, great teamwork, good pace, and Ben with some very, very impressive driving then to have a go at Alex Taylor. If Alex was struggling with fuel, perhaps you can understand why it might have looked easier than it was, but you know, Ben proving that you don't have to be sideways all the time, you can drive neatly and smoothly, and a winner by 7 seconds at the end of this Masters Pre-66 touring car race. So let's have a look at the provisional results with, as I say, 1 or 2 penalties to be factored in. Marcus Jewell and Ben Klukas victorious ahead of Craig Davis, with Dave Coyne, as we think, driving solo in the end to take 3rd ahead of Steve Soper and Henry Mann. 4th on the road, but a drive-through penalty was never served. Expect a bigger penalty to come. 5th, Richard Dutton, plus 15 seconds. So where does that drop him to? Costs him at least 2 places, does it not, behind Alex Thistlethwaite and then the Adrian Wilmot, Mark Farmer, Studebaker. Mark Burton 8th, ahead of Sean Balfe and Tom Ashton. Roy Alderslade rounding out the top 10. 11th to Endaf Owens, the best of the Mini Cooper heroes, ahead of Mark Hales and Alan Ross Jones. John Spears 13th from Graham Langford, and then Phil Bullen Brown. The penalised Paddy Shovelin 16th, ahead of John Dunham and Mark Owens. Cortina. Graham Pattle next from Chris Clarkson and David Smithies, who had a spin in the Falcon. Adrian Miles 20th after his enforced drive-through penalty. Martin Melling and Jason Minshaw next from Richard Bateman and Roger Bartman. Master stalwarts, and then those that didn't get to the end: Alex Taylor, Mark Martin, Justin Law we lost, William Dreidel in the gravel, Dan Wheeler stopped, Liam Window and Ashley Davis's Mini ran out of brakes. Tom Sharp retired. The Nairns Cooper S we lost very early on, and Dave Edgecombe, I'm not even sure, got into the race because he didn't seem to register at all on the opening lap, so that Mini was another one that didn't
make it, yes.
No.
So a fair amount for the recovery truck to do before we have to worry about the next race in this Masters Festival at Donington Park over the Easter weekend.